Alrighty, just need to do a little bit of setup here. We've got ZBrush. And just like we were doing last week, we're going to be going over the 4R8 setup. Oh, and if you haven't watched it, go watch Harmon Quest. That was the advertisement on Twitch as I was loading up. It's a good one. Alright, so we got the Wacom set up this way to this way. Perfect. We got this. We got OBS recording it. Nice. Okay, and we are on PavWork. Didn't want to be streaming a ZBrush. Alright, we got this, and we're going to go ahead and start recording. Oh, you know what? Just in case, we'll also bring up the streaming topics. Here we go. Hey, thanks for showing up. Okay, yeah, I got Restream, and I swear my Restream token resets every time. I thought it was supposed to last for like 30 days or something, but it always surprises me. Cool. Hey guys, thanks everybody for showing up. I'm going to go ahead, I guess we can go ahead and get started. So again, issue number 32 of NCG Magazine is what we're going to be going over, and we didn't get very far last time, but we did cover a lot of stuff, so that's okay. And my article's on, page 60 something. So I think we got through like, we did the Z modeler stuff. We also talked a lot about dynamic subdivisions just to make sure we hit that. No, I think we hit it enough. I don't know. I really don't remember where we left off, but okay, we've got dynamic subdivision, Z modeler. Again, you know what? Okay, this is what I need to do. I need to pull up my article that I wrote. Okay, hold on just a second. I forgot about that. Okay, go here. Travel per NCG tutorial. Okay, so first thing, we did the spotlight concept and import, and then we did blocking out the shapes, and that was, we went over not only Z modeler to block out your shapes, but also using the clip brush and stuff. I guess we can, let's see. And you know, ZBrush 4R8, you have to double click these dividers, and then if you want to show 4 of these, you can show 4 columns in here, which I prefer, and then you can close that out, and you can hit the comma key to hide that, or you can hit the hide button. What else? Sap asks, how do you convert a Z movie into a dot movie? That would be if you have a star here, and you go, okay, let's make a movie. So you go to movie, stock is over here, and we'll go ahead and do it's been a while since I've been in here. Let's do a turntable. So if I hit this turntable button, probably I'm going to go down here. I'm going to say cursor size is 0, spin frames 180 is fine, spin cycles is 1 is fine, quality cranked all the way up, and so here we're capturing the window, and so this would capture the entire window of ZBrush. We're just going to capture the document. Medium means it's going to capture the document size, which in this case is going to be 1230 by 866, and then it's going to drop it down to half. So it's going to do this anti-aliased half, which I think is under draw. AA half, is that in here now? It used to be on the right hand side. Maybe not. Okay, so it would be under document. Yeah, AA half, that's what it's going to render out to. So if you don't want that to happen, or if you want to render out aliased and you want to overshoot it, what you're going to have to do is, let's see, and also if you want to make it the right aspect ratio, what you're going to need to do is go over here to document, and you're going to say turn off proportion. We're going to do 1280, and then we're going to do 720, enter, and hit resize. Now if you don't have enough room on your, and then hit Control N to clear your canvas. If you don't have enough room to see it, just go down here. Shoot, that's going to be under document now as well. You can go document and zoom, and you can zoom your document out. It's probably hard for you to see, but you can see the document is now visible right here. So now you can position your object right on your document here. And now when you capture it, it's going to be half of, if document medium, it's going to be anti-aliased half of 1280 by 720. If you want to double that, just hit double, Yes, and now it resizes your document. Hit Control N, and again go to Document Zoom so you can see your entire document. So now it's going to be double the size of 1280 by 720, but when it captures medium, it's going to half that, so it's going to be 1280 by 720. So what you can do is hit this turntable to render a turntable. Now, if you want to have BPR on and have like shadows and stuff, you can hit that BPR button. Is it? There you go. It's very subtle, but you can turn shadows on here. And then if you hit BPR before you hit turntable, it'll go ahead and render each one as it's making a turntable. Now, I'm going to hit escape because that's going to take too long. Not that it takes a really long time, but it's a little bit longer. If I just hit turntable now, you're going to see it's capturing an entire turntable of this object. Now, if I don't go to, you're going to see when I do that, I have a delete button now. I can delete my movie. If I don't delete this and I say swap this out for a helix, and we do it this way, and then I do another turntable, that's going to, oh, it's going that way, and I do another turntable, it's going to capture that on the end of that movie. In fact, let's go ahead and do a turntable this way, then we'll go back this way. And if I want it to rotate the other way, what I can do is just rotate this object. And now when I do another turntable, I'm just adding to that movie because I never hit delete. So now that I've got all those turntables put together, you can save this as a Z movie. And you can load up Z movies later if you want to. If you want to convert this to a movie file, you have to go to Export. And then we'll just throw this on the desktop here. And this will export it as a movie. You also notice it had a little like splash screen intro and a little outro here. That's controlled under your overlay image. So if you don't want that, you can change the logo here. You can drop the opacity down to 0, and then under title image, you could do fade in times 0, fade out times 0. So there you go. And then you could also just delete this. Oops. Let's delete it, and then we'll go to an arrow and say, okay, this is going to be our real turntable here. So we'll go ahead and rotate this thing like so, and now we'll do another turntable. It's not, we don't have a delete here, so it's going to be fresh. So we'll do a turntable. Export, desktop, test. It's exporting that. And then when we go to our desktop here, how do I show you guys this? Here and here is our MPEGs. And in your movie settings, I guess VLC player is fine. We've got our movies in here. Now, as far as .mov goes, I would assume there's probably export preferences in here. Highest quality. Oh, also you probably want to have that checked on. But you can also just use Handbrake. So let's load up Handbrake here. And I'm going to say open a single video file. Oops. Let's go open a single video file here, and we'll go to desktop and say, okay, I don't want an MPEG. I want an MOV file. So then just choose, I wouldn't use this to convert to MOV. Or I don't, but I'm sure there's like a .mov option in here. In this case, I want to do MP4 or whatever. So I can go ahead and load that up and just go ahead and run it through Handbrake to convert it. And Handbrake's free, so you can give that a shot. Yeah, and so oh, you know what? Maybe they did change it because I did. No, it was set at 720p. So yeah, we doubled the size of our, and you could do 1080p, 1080 by 1920 by 1080, and then double that, and then render it out. Or you can do 4K. Doesn't really matter. Well, 4K might be a little bit tricky because I think your document size can only go up so far. Yeah, so you'd be pushing the limits of that if you did render half and got the aliasing. Anyways, let's go ahead and preferences initialize. And we'll go ahead and kill that document there. And if I miss any of your questions, just keep shouting them out, and I'll try and, if it's relevant to, we haven't started yet, but if it's relevant to the NCG magazine article we're doing, and it's the making of that sci-fi weapon that you can see. So you know what, let's go ahead and load that up. Also, let me go ahead and go back to my document here. We'll change that range down to 0 so we don't get that. And let me go ahead and load up the result here. So streaming, no, pistol. Then this is where we left off, and then if I go down here to the bake file, and this is what I use to throw in the painter, we can go over this too. I'm going to edit mode here. Let's go to subtool. There we go. So we'll be making this thing, and we're already pretty far in. So far so good. So let's go ahead and see if there's anything else before we get started. How to make long dreadlocks by placing hair cards. Oh man, hire somebody to do that. That sounds like a nightmare. Yeah, Z-Movie doesn't convert the movie. I guess Handbrake, or if you have, I mean, .mov files I haven't played with since like college. I'm Apple format. So maybe if you have like the pro version of QuickTime. When's the last time you used QuickTime? Yeah, if you have the pro version of QuickTime, I'm sure it would. And I'll do it. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. Okay, alrighty. Okay, so we blocked out our shapes. We talked about dynamic subdivisions. We talked about live booleans, and so we're going to get to barrel rifling. So let me just do a quick overview. And again, let's go ahead and start up our streaming demo here. Where we left off. Oops, it's a little bit weird. There we go. Okay, so I'll go ahead and edit mode. So we talked about how to use both ZModeler to get, you know, these kind of shapes going, and we also talked about dynamic subdivisions here. Oh, let me go ahead and kill this recorder. We don't need that. So let's also go to skin shader. So I have these things docked down here. If you need your own custom menu set up, and I'm going to be going into this custom menu a lot, I try and explain where these things are when I use them. But if you want to use this exact custom menu, just go to either my Gumroad page or my QBrush page here. So there's my Gumroad page. Here's my QBrush page. And these, if you scroll all the way down to the very bottom, you'll see intro to ZBrush files, and you can just load up this custom menu, my hotkeys. You don't have to do this if you want to do your own. Just go to my YouTube channel here. I'm going to go to playlists. Go to the Intro to ZBrush Part 2 section, and it'll walk you through all the ways to make custom menus and custom hotkeys. So you can just make your own. So we talked about dynamic subdivision. So if we go over here and we just have a box model, and you know what, let's simplify this as we're going back over this and we're kind of revisiting. So I'm going to take any old primitive here. And if I have a primitive and I go over here to initialize, we can change any of these settings in here while we initialize. If I'm not interested in that, all I got to do is hit make polymesh 3D, go back to initialize, and it's changed to these Q cube options. I'm going to hit Q cube, hit X to go across X symmetry, which is under transform, activate symmetry across the X axis. Let's turn on our floor so we can see we want to work Z forward. That little blue line is Z, Y is up, so the bottom of your object's always on the floor. And now if we click floor off and we have X turned on, we can go into our Z modeler brush, BZM, and then we can hover over a face, for instance, and say Q mesh, a single poly, and then we just Q mesh these things out. Or you can Q mesh through, or you can delete a single poly, and all I'm doing is hitting the space bar. I'm hovering over a face, hitting the space bar, choosing my options, hovering over an edge, hitting the space bar, getting edge options, and hovering over a point, hitting the space bar, getting point options. So now with edge options, I can hover over an edge and go like bridge, 2 holes, and I can bridge this edge to this edge and pull up. It's all dynamic. It doesn't have to be dynamic. You can turn that option off. That's one way to do this. Speaking of dynamic, one of those things would be like if I hover over an edge, insert multiple edge loops, you're going to see interactive elevation is turned off. And it's set to single edge loop by default, so you can put in a single edge loop here. But if you want to put in multiple edge loops, you can hit multiple edge loops and just drag that out. If you don't want these alternating polygroups, you can turn that option off as well. You can say same polygroup and it'll just keep it the same. Why you might want to keep that alternating is because you can very quickly alternate these polygroups and then Q mesh, polygroup all, and then polygroup all these out. Now it's doing polygroups all over the place, so if you don't want those to match, go to insert multiple edge loops, add alternate polygroup, and as you're pulling this down, hit Alt, and that'll just cycle through different polygroups here. So now what you can do is quickly Q mesh polygroup all, and you can just pull this in. Now you're just making these shapes really quickly. And another thing we can talk about is insert multiple edge loops. For example, interactive elevation, you can turn that option on, then you can pull out and down. You can kind of round these corners out like so. So now we're getting these basic shapes. And we also, again, have our X symmetry turned on. So as we're Q meshing these things around, you can go ahead and just Q mesh to your heart's content. And you can also hold down Alt, and you can like paint two sides and Q mesh out, or you can paint an entire section and Q mesh out, or you can paint an entire section and maybe go to inset. You can do a single poly. If you're painting selections, you can inset all these, and then you can Q mesh polygroup all. Now, this one, these polygroups look similar, but they are actually different. You can also go through here and hold down Control. Now, when I Q mesh down, it made these green, the same polygroup as here. Again, when I pull down, just tap Alt once. That'll go ahead and swap your polygroups out. Now you can polygroup these all at once. And if you want to, you can hold down Control and pop out copies of these. Of course, when you do this and you hold down Control, also you probably want to tap Alt, cycle through another. Let's see, hold down Control, tap Alt, let that go, and then you can polygroup all these. And then those are going to fit right in there. And if you want to split these off, you can go hold down Control Shift, go into Select Lasso, and you can just go to your Split Hidden. Now the split functions are going to be under your Subtool menu here, and that'll be under your Split menu here. So that's ZModeler in a nutshell. And we can, if you don't like this, we've already split it off. You can just hit Delete. Hit always OK. There we go. And now we're back to this thing. So if you want to know more about this, go to my, here's my playlist again. Go to Intro to ZBrush Part 3, and that'll walk you through the Intro to ZBrush Part 3 ZModeler. All the ZModeler functionality you can shake a stick at. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Oh yeah, so when, so Darkness says, I don't know, man, you talk too fast for me to catch up. I do talk very fast. I want to give you a lot of information, and in order for me to, especially when I'm streaming, in order for me to, if I cater to one audience, which is the super beginners, then I feel like I'm going to alienate all my other audience. And when I record these, they're going to go, here, let me show you. So when I go on YouTube, go to my live stream full episodes. So last time, so here's last week's live stream full episode. If you go over here to this setting here and you go to speed, just do like 0.75, 0.5, and it'll slow me way down. I'll sound a little bit weird, but the reason I talk normal and my normal is fast is because when I watch YouTube videos, when I watch tutorials, and I'm catering this to my audience, which is me, it would be physically and mentally and spiritually exhausting for me to talk slow and actually go through these processes slow. And when I do go fast, I'd realize that when I was doing the ZModeler stuff, I was like, oh, I'm going really fast. This is just to show you basic functionality. If you want to go slower and step by step, again, just go to my YouTube channel and then go to the, where is it? Intro to ZBrush Part 3. Where is that? There you go. Intro to ZBrush Part 3. And in fact, let's just go here to ZBrush, Intro to ZBrush Part 3. And you're going to see already in here, you're going to have ZModeler discussion, Intro to ZModeler, base functionality, dynamic sub D increasing. So everything we're going over, it's all right there. So there's multiple resources. This isn't like, well, hell, even if I was watching Bob Ross on PBS, he doesn't talk fast, but I don't think I would probably be able to follow along in real time and like finish a painting like he does in 30 minutes or an hour. I don't think. And it probably wouldn't make for very good TV. How do you model exact features like a celebrity face? That would just be bringing in, when you're doing likenesses, texture, import, and then bring in all your face reference, load it up here in Spotlight. Since I noticed that, if you go to Intro to ZBrush Part 3, and you go all the way down here, all the way down here to the very, all the way down here to the very bottom, you have Spotlight reference modeling. Load that up. It's basically, you go into the movie. So we did a movie this morning. If you go in here and you just load up your textures like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can set up your movie file so you can hit the arrow key and just cycle through each one of those images. So as you're modeling, you're matching their likeness. You're probably going to have to change your draw size here. So you're going to go to draw, angle of view, and play with this number to find out which focal length matches the photograph with your object. And then it's really not difficult, it's just boring and tedious to do likenesses, in my opinion, but that's just one stupid guy's opinion. Cool. I'm having a similar conundrum when I stream. Can I just spam my viewers your tutorial links? By all means. And again, I'm not trying to be like, hey, you can only watch my stuff. It's just, that's where I know where that stuff is. I'm sure other people have much better tutorials than I do, but since I know where my stuff is, that's where I point people. By all means, if they have questions about Intro to ZBrush stuff, that's one thing I should probably mention. Go to my YouTube channel, and under playlists, if you go to Intro to ZBrush Part 1, and also, what else are we doing? ZBrush 4R8, what's new? And this ZBrush 4R8, what's new? It's got the little sci-fi weapon there. That's going to go through all the new ZBrush 4R8 functionality. So Intro to ZBrush Part 1 will be like the basics of ZBrush to get up and running. Wherever that is, I forget. I'm having a hard time finding stuff on this. I need to reorganize this. Wow, I am losing my mind. Tell me Intro to ZBrush Part 1. There it is, Intro to ZBrush Part 1. 47 videos. We'll get you started in ZBrush, and then ZBrush 4.8, what's new, will get you caught up. And then you'll basically know everything I know after all the Intro to ZBrush stuff. Cool. Oh, Nazumi, thanks for showing up, man. Yeah, sorry about those earthquakes. I don't know, man, there's been a lot of hurricanes and earthquakes and a lot of disasters lately, but I'm glad you're okay. Okay, so we were talking about this. We just did a little bit of Z modeler functionality, and if we go over here and we turn off polyframe, you're going to see if we hit the D key, that's going to turn on dynamic subdivision. We can hit yes, and it's going to melt our object, which is nice if that's the look you're going for. It's just basically subdividing. So if I do Shift D, that's going to turn off dynamic subdivision. That's happening under geometry, dynamic sub D. So when I hit D, you're going to see dynamic turns on, and it's going to a smooth subdiv of 2. So if I see the geometry up here and I hit Control D, that's going to hit this divide key, and now I have actual subdivision levels. Like so. Now the reason I don't like working with actual subdivision levels is, let's say I want to make a change and be like, you know what, I want to extrude this face. You know, Q mesh polygroup all, and I can't because, you know, this has multiple subdivision levels. I also can't do like brush insert BI and go to industrial parts and like insert stuff because it's got multiple subdivision levels. It's very limiting what you can do. Now you can hit delete lower, and now you can do like Z modeler or Q mesh polygroup all and do this. But what's a lot easier is just to, instead of actually subdividing your object, is hit D. That's the preview, and this is what it's going to look like if you were to subdivide this twice. So now if I go over here to Q mesh polygroup all and I just pull this out and I do Shift D, oh, we're back to normal, and I can keep just pulling this out. Or I can go to like inset region, and I can paint these, and I can just inset this, and then I can go back to Q mesh here. So now when I hit D again, I can still model, and I'm still previewing it. The other cool thing is I can preview this model while I make changes. So if I go through here and I hover over this line and I go to like bevel edge loop complete, and I just bevel this line, I'm still smooth previewing, but now I can go through here and I can alt paint these ones, and then we can go Q mesh polygroup all. I can pull this up like so. Another thing I should probably mention, if I'm alt painting a lot. So if you want to make this whole ring a new polygroup, hover over this edge and go to polygroup, polyloop. Then you tap, and then if you hold and tap alt, so if you just tap on this edge and then hold and then just tap alt, it'll cycle through different polygroups if you want to. And now you can do Q mesh polygroup all. However, if you wanted to say change all these polygroups to a different polygroup, or maybe even something weirder like I want to change these 3 here, just alt paint, and that'll paint those as a white polygroup. So now what we can do, if we do Shift D, we can hover over this face, Q mesh polygroup all, and when we alt paint, that treats these as one polygon. So I don't have to do polygroup all. I can, it'll still work, but you're going to see if I go to single poly here, it'll still treat those as a single poly. Another thing you're going to see is it's going to snap to this. When I use the Q mesh brush, that's one of the features. It'll snap to one of the other objects next to it. So that's very useful to get these kind of shapes. So if I do here, Q mesh a single poly, it's going to snap to that one next to it. then pull this up. If I don't want that functionality, I can just go to extrude that face, and I can just extrude this face. Now, you're going to have to remember, if I hold down Shift to smooth, those faces aren't connected. But QMesh will connect them. So you can go QMesh a single poly and snap, and you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 before it's flat. You can also change that. QMesh a single poly, align, let's say half step. Now it's going to go snap up once, and then it's half full, half full, half full. You can also pull down, and it'll QMesh down, half and full. So you can just QMesh all the way straight through here and QMesh through here. It should do, let's go down. There we go. And QMesh these off, so you can use that to delete faces. You can also pull all the way through a mesh, which is really useful. So if I go through here, then let's say we want to do, let's do split. I'm going to hover over a face. We're going to do a split that face, and we'll go ahead and split this face. And then we'll go ahead and hover over this point, and we'll do another split. So we'll split this point. And then and now if I want to split another other point exactly how I did this one, just go back here and just tap, and it'll split through there. And now we can do a QMesh. Let's do polygroup island in case this green is the same as something else. So this polygroup is on its own island. So I can just pull this straight back, and that'll go ahead and connect those for me. And now when I hit D, that'll be dynamically subdivided. Now you're going to see this one's a lot more crispy than the other ones. What that did was give me automatic creasing. So you see this little crease around here. If you go over here to geometry crease, here are your crease options. You can hover over an edge and go to like crease, edge loop complete, or edge loop partial. Edge loop partial will stop when it hits like a T-junction like this. Edge loop complete will sometimes carry all the way through. So you can kind of play with, oh yeah, see it goes all the way through here. If I do edge loop partial, it should stop there. So you can kind of control that a little bit more. But if I hit D, you're going to see what that's doing is creasing this edge for me. So we can go to this side here, and we can crease this edge. And if you're having a hard time, let's go ahead and make that matte cap gray. If you're having a hard time seeing those edges, just hit Shift D. So we have D turned on, and we have that side crease. If you can't quite get this edge, just hit Shift D. It'll turn it off. And now you can just hit crease and then hit D again. And now what we're doing is giving that a new shape. So now you can go through here, and if you want to crease this entire top area, you can hover over a face, and you can go to crease, flat, island, outer targets, and then you can just crease that entire flat area here, or this entire flat area here, or this entire flat area here, and it'll just crease your outer targets, or this flat area back here. So very quickly, you can dial in those shapes. Now you can also use control loops to enable creasing. So you could go over here and say I want to crease this entire flat area, or if you hit Shift D, you can hover over this edge here and go to Insert Single Edge Loop. And if you pull an edge loop close to a surface or close to an edge like this, when we're averaging these vertices, and I just hit Control Z, when we're averaging these vertices, see how far it melts? If I have dynamic subdivision turned on and I pull a single edge loop, see how it tightens around that bottom shape? And if I do another one down here, see how it kind of tightens those shapes out? Those are using control loops to kind of control how tight that fall off is when it averages vertices. So you can use that as opposed to creasing. However, the reason I don't like to do that is because that adds a lot of geometry and it makes it a little bit harder to edit as I go. So if I want to have that exact same effect of tightening but then also having a nice fall off, you can do that with your smooth subdivision and your crease level. So you're going to say these are creased and the crease level is set to 15. My smooth subdivision level is set to 2. So if I turn off polyframe here, if I crank that up to smooth subdivision level of 3, you're going to see it gets a little more resolution because it's essentially going Control D or subdividing multiple times. So smooth subdivision level of 4 gets smoother, smooth subdivision level of 5 gets smoother. The creases stay super crispy. So if you don't want it super crispy, you want it to be tight, but not super hard edge. What you can do is take your crease level, smooth subdivision level set to 5. If you take this crease level and you set it to 5, it's still going to look the exact same. And you do Shift D and D to lock that in. However, if you do a crease level of 4 and smooth subdivision level of 5, you do Shift D and D. That's going to basically crease up to subdivision level 4 and then uncrease all and then subdivide one more time. So now we're getting a slight fall off here on those edges. So if we go to smooth subdivision level 6, it's smoother and we're getting a nice fall off here. If you want to make that even more drastic, change your crease level like to 3, Shift D and D, and now it's even smoother. And you get the smooth look, and you can still go through here and do like QMesh, Polygroup Island, or let's see. Let's go ahead and alt paint these ones. And you're going to see it's a little bit slower here because let's go to inset, polygroup all region, because we're dynamically subdividing this thing up 6 times. So we're getting this look here. But if we go to QMesh, polygroup island, we pull this back, try polyframe, it's exactly what we would think it is. Now if we want to go ahead and crease these ones, we can go to crease, flat island, we can crease this one, and we're still getting that really nice smooth fall off. If I hit Shift-D, this is our actual geometry. So we're getting a very high resolution look, but we're not paying the price of actually subdividing and being locked in. We can always change it. So that's the basics of smooth subdividing and all that good stuff. Hey, I5, thanks for showing up. Cool. Oh yeah, and no problem about the unrelated stuff. If we're just going to be going over, the NCG tutorial stuff. If I can't quite reach it, I'll just throw it into my streaming topics, and I can hit it up at a later date. Okay, so we got this, we got this. Okay, so another thing is we're only playing with smooth subdivisions and crease levels. Another thing, if I want to initialize this back down to a cube, you're going to see if I do Shift-D, it's just a cube. If I hit D, it's going to smooth subdivide it. Let's drop that back down to like 3. Smooth subdivide it down. Now, instead of going through here and you can also do your crease. In your crease level, you can do a crease tolerance, drop that down to like 56, hit crease, it'll crease all your edges. And now you can do like a smooth subdiv of 4, crease level of 3, and that'll give you a nice creased look here. So now we can alt paint these ones, QMesh, and we can QMesh these out. Now you're going to see, okay, these are creased, but now these are creased. If I go over here and I do my crease tolerance again, if I uncrease all, you're going to see it just does that smooth look here. And I guess we can turn on polyframe so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just pulling these faces out. If I do my crease tolerance again, it'll go ahead and crease all those edges for me, and I'll get this look. But as soon as I go through here and I pull these out, it's going to be, these aren't creased, and I got to go in over here and crease again. If I want to get this look and I'm just using box modeling, what I'm going to probably choose to do is, instead of using smooth subdivisions and creasing, I can go over here to my dynamic subdivisions and change it to QGrid. You can use QGrid and smooth subdivisions at the same time. It's probably a little bit cheaper if you go over here to QGrid and you drop in like maybe 2 and then change your coverage, and this will just give you a really simple bevel. If you choose 3, you can also do bevel or chamfer and change this constant. You can get all sorts of different kind of looks, and it's going to give you that kind of beveled look. So as you go through, and there's no creasing applied, so as I paint these ones and pull these out, and I can just keep pulling these out here, and I can go through and I can like say maybe let's go QMesh single poly, pull this one in, and then maybe paint these ones and pull it out. So as we're doing this one, it's staying pretty creased, but I could do Shift-D, and that's my actual geometry. So this is for hard surface modeling. Where this would break down is if I go through here, and let's do Shift-D. I hover over this face here, and I want to say maybe bridge, connected polys with a circle, 100% circle, specified resolution at 8 is fine, and triangle sides, we can just connect those, and now we've got these rounded corners, and you can do that for any of these here. So if you want to do it like here, that's going to go inside. We can do it up here. Okay, so whenever it does this, go back into your settings here and say align to normal, and that should fix that problem. There you go. And then we can do it here. Yay, so we've got these all rounded out. Now the problem is when I have QGrid turned on and I hit D, you're going to see it's creasing every single, or it's giving you a bevel on every single face. Not great for rounded surfaces. So what we're going to do instead is we'll change this from, whenever you put rounded stuff in, change it from your dynamic subdivision, turn QGrid off, turn your smooth subdivision back up, and now we can just do our crease tolerance, and now this is all creased up. And then our crease level is set to 3, smooth sub is set to 4, and now we'll go ahead and get those nice rounded edges built in. So, please show masking on dynamic subdivision. Looks strange and blocky here. Okay, let's see. Masking. So here we mask this out. We'll do Shift-D. That's masked, and then D. Looks okay on my machine, I think. Unless I'm missing something here. That's a good point too, is you can go through here. You can also use slicing. So if you go through here and use slice curve, you can add geometry this way. You can also use your, slice doesn't go across axis, so you're going to have to do a mirror and weld. Mirror is deformation, modified topology, deformation, mirror across the x-axis. The reason I did that is because if I have it on this side and I do a mirror and weld, it's going to mirror the negative axis, negative x to positive x. If I turn on my floor here, you're going to see this quadrant over here is my negative x, this quadrant over here is my positive x. So if I do mirror and weld as a geometry, modified topology, mirror and weld, you can do mirror and weld. Let's see, turn off the floor. And it's going to replace this side to this side. So I need to mirror this first, deformation mirror, and then geometry, modified topology, mirror and weld. Now the reason I have these right next to each other is so I don't have to go down here to deformation and then go up here to geometry, modified topology, mirror and weld. These are just, I use them all the time next to each other, so in my custom menu I just put them next to each other. So you can slice through and get new geometry, and you can also, if you want to clip, like, okay, I want this rounded, but then I want these to be straight. How do I align these vertices? Just go into your clip curve, and anything that's past that gradient, it's going to clip them back to that line. So you can just clip these surfaces back and flatten them out, even more so, like that. And then you can hit D, and then I'll go ahead and give you your dynamic subdivisions back. Petkov asked me, Mike, when I paste the UVs for my clone onto my actual mesh, the creasing of the subtool, if any, go poof in the air. Do you have any way around this? I don't. I think that's a bug. And in fact, I think when Joseph just went over the Ask ZBrush, or no, it was on his Ask ZBrush Live. He tried it, and I think it failed as well. So you can always put in a support ticket on Pixelogic's website, and they're usually pretty Johnny on the spot. So maybe in a point release like ZBrush 4.8 P3, they might fix that. Oh, paint mask. Okay, let's see. Hold down Control, and you got mask pin, and it's blocky. Okay, so that's an artifact. So if you start, if anything in ZBrush kind of looks weird, and you just kind of tumble your camera a little bit, it'll go ahead and smooth itself back out. So occasionally you'll have camera-based stuff, but you also have to remember when you're masking on something that's super low res, it's like, well, this is a high res mesh. Why isn't it masking nicely? It's because in reality, if you hit Shift D, you don't really have that much geometry. So it's kind of giving you the low res mask on a supposedly high res geo. Now, if I want to go ahead and give this real geometry, all I got to do is go to my dynamic and hit apply, and now I have real geometry here. So now when I mask, it'll be a much nicer mask. But then again, you have real subdivisions here. So if you wanted to continue to Z model this thing, you would have to either Z mod, you'd have to delete lower and Z model on very small geometry, or I don't know, you're kind of SOL at that point. So my transform type menu, deform bend curve slice. Oh yeah, that's another thing I want to go over before we get too far. So we have this object here. We hit D. You can also use, if you hit W, go into, let's go ahead and go out of X symmetry when you go into this gizmo. It usually just works nicer. I'm going to hold down Alt and shoot this to the middle. We go to this gizmo here. We can do, what's a good one? Extender is a good one. Let's go to the extender here. And you can use this to extend the middles. So you can extend it this way and this way. You can also add scale on this side, and you can add resolution or symmetry as well. You can dial in symmetry or not. You can dial in resolution on your extender, and Y symmetry, X symmetry. Let's see, extender this way. And then Y resolution, where are we at? Oh, Z resolution. So if you extend in the Z here, and obviously I don't use this very much, but you can extend your objects, and you can also cut your objects here, and you can also move this thing around. There you go. So when you're cutting through and extending, you can actually choose on. Now this isn't a great object to show you this thing, but you can use that to kind of slice and move your object pretty easily. And if we go back into the gear here, multi-slice is another cool one. So then you can go through here and you can do slice width and slice resolution. So we're actually adding more slices in the middle. And then if we want to move this up or over, we can just do the multi-slice that way. Let's see, there we go. So we can slice this way and change the resolution. That's the slice width, resolution, and then position this wherever we see fit. And then we can go up here and hit accept, and now everything's all sliced up. So a lot of cool gizmo stuff you can use to move stuff around. And again, if I miss any of your questions, just let me know. I'm having to go through, I'm streaming to 3 different places, so. So my transform menu, deform, so the menu we just used sometimes flips to gizmo and blocks the use of the tools. It probably hit W maybe, so if I go into my gizmo and I do want to do like a bend curve, and I want to change the axis is fine, smoothness is fine, curve resolution, we'll just drop in some more resolution here. So now I can go through here and just kind of bend this thing around. If you hit W, it pops you back to gizmo mode. So just hit W again, and it should go back in here, and then you should be able to go through here and do all your crazy bend deformer stuff here. And then if you're happy with this, go to accept, or you can hit reset, or you can hit delete. Now let's delete that out of there. Is there a way to freeze one object before inserting, let's say, a cylinder or sphere to work exclusively on a piece before welding it to the main freezed part? Yes. Yeah. Now, for your example specifically, if we go over here to the head, so you can have an object here, and it can have subdivisions. So if we subdivide this once, also, if you accidentally delete lower, or you have to add something and you delete lower, if you hit reconstruct, it'll reconstruct you back to your regular subdivision level. So now you have 2 here. So if you have a subdivision, and it's like, okay, I want to add, I'm trying to think of a good example of why I would want to do this. Usually what I would do is if I want to add an ear, and we actually did this in the Batman cowl. So if you go to my YouTube channel and you go to the Batman cowl playlist, we go through and we slice and dice, and we actually add ears. So I think I get rid of this guy's ear. Oh no, I guess maybe yeah, do I don't know. Yeah, I think I do add ears. Yeah, I do add I had a ear I sculpted previously and just attached to the head, but this is all with Dynamesh. So I would, unless you have a really good reason to want subdivision geometry and then add ears, what I would do is add your ears first. So if we don't have ears, like so, and we'll go to delete hidden, close holes, mirror and weld, and then we'll just go ahead and smooth this down. I'm going to change this to smooth stronger here. Now if we want to go to like brush, BI, brush, insert body parts, and then we just grab the ear here, and then rotate this however you want. These ears are a little bit cartoony, so if you want to modify these to be a little bit more naturalistic, feel free. And then you can control drag again, and now you've got your ears attached to your head. And then if you want nice geometry and not Dynamesh, then you just zero mesh it. You can, let me see. For example, if I hold down Control and Mask and then hit Control W, that'll give me, let's go ahead and turn off the line. That'll give me a polygroup here. Let's make this a little bit more obvious here. There we go. We got a polygroup here. So, for instance, if I go to BI brush insert, and I want to go to my insert primitives half, and I go to a cylinder, and I put this cylinder on here, and I hit W, you're going to see there's a hole back here. So if I control drag again, and I have Dynamesh off, it's going to go ahead and sew this to my head. So for a better example, I suppose we could do, so this is called Mesh Fusion. And I'm going to go down to, so there's level 1, delete higher. We can make a polygroup on this side of his head, and then see, you know, okay, I can go to my Z modeler brush here. If I want to paint this thing blue, I can go into my polygroup, a single poly, I can tap this blue one, tap shift, that'll inherit the blue. I can also just go in here with my alt key and start painting on the blue, tap shift, and that'll inherit the blue, and now I can just paint where I want that to be blue. And then I can hover over this, and we can go to BI brush insert primitives half. Oops. BI brush insert primitives half, choose the cylinder, and now if I drag out on this polygroup and it's got a hole in the back and I don't have Dynamesh turned on, I control drag again, it'll go ahead and mesh fusion those two pieces together. You're also going to see it can be based on how far away this thing is, so you can rotate it around and move it, and then it'll just fuse those back together. Now if I had subdivision history on here, so if I go Control D, now I have subdivision history, so I can't even add this object to it. However, what I can do is I go to free subdivision levels. I can add this on here. I can move it out. I can control drag again. And now I can uncheck free subdivision levels. Then it will go through and add subdivision levels as needed to make those additions. So now I have subdivision level 1, 2, and 3, and I can do it that way. I don't know. You can use that method if you want, free subdivision and add stuff. I personally prefer to have all my stuff figured out in Dynamesh if I'm going to be adding and doing crazy stuff like, go to my snake hook brush here and we're going to make add horns to this guy. So if I go in here and Dynamesh this thing, and it'll even ask you on Dynamesh, do you want to freeze your subdivision levels if you have them? And usually I hit no, and I get this stuff figured out first, like how crazy I want to go with my object, and then once I have everything figured out, and I can Dynamesh at a higher resolution if I want to sculpt in detail here, and then once this is all figured out, then I'll go through and nicely ZRemesh and then project my detail back, and I'm good to go. So I don't add things after I have subdivision levels, just how I prefer to work. The setting to disappear the lightbox when I start ZBrush. Ooh, that's a good one. Z Startup might have something for that. Let's see. Z plugin, Z Startup Master. What time is it? Okay, 45 minutes in. I probably should get started, but I'll go through the last couple questions here. I don't have Z Startup. You can get Z Startup Master from Pixelogic website. Their download section. They've got employee plugins. Z Startup Master might have something for you to get rid of that, but really, I just hit the comma key on your keyboard, and that'll get rid of that. Okay. Cool. Everybody looks like it's being answered here. Is it possible to only do box modeling? Do companies hire those kind of people? For sure. Weapons, vehicles, that's all a lot of hard surface box modeling stuff. Although I do both. I sculpt and I box model. To get, depending on what I need to do, if I need to do organic shapes, and that's kind of what we did, speaking of. So preferences, initialize ZBrush. So just different techniques. On the last video, what we did was we went through and we did box modeling stuff. Let's go ahead and turn everything back on here. So we got this thing here. So here's our concept, and we extracted it out, and we kind of went over how to make a concept projected, and then use this to model your stuff. And then we went over box modeling methods and dynamic subdivisions, and then we went over just using your sculpting to get the shape you want. And then of course you can rebuild this with we went through and rebuilt it with Z-spheres, or you can use ZRemesher and polygroups to get really quickly rebuilt surfaces, so you don't have to box model organic stuff. Now you can box model organic stuff, it's just kind of slow for me. And that's just a me thing. If you're amazing and fast with organic box modeling, then by all means. Weird. Yeah, so W here, deformation, bend curve. Oh yeah, you probably might want to turn off. And this is also, let's do bend arc. So I go in here to bend arc, and then I can just kind of really quickly just slightly modify the curve of some of these shapes here. It's like, okay, I want this to be like a little more pinched on the side. So I'll just go in here and modify this a bit. Now if I hit W, it's going to go into gizmo mode here. So you should be able to hit W again. If not, go back into the gear and just choose bend arc again, and it'll shoot you back into bend arc. And it shouldn't change anything. So if we want to pop this back just a little bit more, we can do that. And then once you're ready to accept, usually you can just hit W and then start sculpting. If you want to be sure it's locked in, just go in here and hit accept, and now you've got that. How do you weld complex objects in different subtools without merging them together? How do you weld complex objects in different subtools without welding them? Different subtools without welding them together. And different subtools. That I don't know. I would have to merge them first, and then I can split them out. Split them out later, maybe. Cool. Everybody good? And again, if I miss something, I'm having to scroll through quite a bit. So when you freeze subdivision levels and then reconstruct subdivs, what does it do under the hood? Is it projecting details for each level? I think it is, because you're going to notice when you freeze subdivisions and it has a mask around what you were working on and it masks everything else out. I think it just goes through. The manual way to do it, if I remember correctly, is you delete lower, do everything you want to do. No, I forget. I used to do the manual method when I worked at Sony, and it's been so long. There's a manual way to do it that would show you how to do it under the hood, but I really don't remember what it is. Having a hard time with thin tendrils. When I dynamesh, the tendrils get cut or disappear. How could I preserve the geo? Work on the tendrils as a separate subtool first with a higher resolution on your dynamesh, and then when everything else becomes... I do this a lot when I work on humans. I'll work on a head, and I'll work on fingers and hands as a separate subtool, and work on those. And in fact, if you want to see this in action, you can either go to my YouTube channel here. This is my ZBrush YouTube channel. So when I stream for Pixel Logic, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see it here when we talk about this with the workshop 1, 2, and 3, where I just make the body. Also, in my live stream highlights, scroll down to the very bottom, we talk about this, just making full bodies. So either one of those. It's basically working on the hand separately until you get to a point where, in fact, let's go to my ArtStation. Go to my ArtStation here, and if you go to the commander, and you scroll down, I sculpted this one for my CG Master Academy class. Well, not for it, but with them. We were kind of going through the concept iteration stuff, and you're going to see I have my body here. I don't even have the hands on there. And when I do have the hands on there, see how they're separate? I'm working on this area dynamesh separately from the hands, which is probably dynameshed even separately from the head at some point, because I work on more hand detail and more head detail and less body detail as I'm blocking things in. Once everything's up to the same level-ish in dynamesh, that's when I'll dynamesh them together, ZRemesh, project my details, and then I start just detailing in the object. So now the hand is seamless with the head, which is seamless with the body, and it's all the same resolution. Or you can use ZRemesher to change the resolution of your object. But yeah, so that goes through the making of that commander dude. But that's the idea. Render a realistic portrait in Keyshot. I might be able to hit that up later. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see I just released the ZBrush to Keyshot Bridge Quick Start. Portrait stuff and skin stuff in Keyshot would be interesting. But I'm not sure off the top of my head if anybody's got a really good one on that one. I'm sure YouTube's got something. Yeah. You know, stay low and work high, especially when I'm doing creature stuff. Cool, thanks for showing up, everybody. And again, I'm just going really quickly through these comments. So if I miss something, how do you import new subtools without it deleting your first subtools? Oh, okay. So if you're importing OBJs, if you're loading a tool, so if I want to load, say, do I have, let's go. So if I load, so I have a tool selected, you're going to see. And if I go over here to streaming, and I guess we're working on Old Man, and I go to Chops McGee, and we load him up. And I go to solo mode here. So you're going to see it makes this new sub Z tool here, and you can actually double click in your Windows Explorer and it'll open up in ZBrush as well. So you're going to see it didn't delete this object we were working on. However, I go to import. This is going to import an OBJ, and it's going to replace this tool. So what I would do is I'd go out of edit mode, hit Control N, clear my canvas, go to the simple brush, go to import, find an OBJ, and now when you import, it'll just be a tool out here, and then you'll go back here to subtool append, and you'll append that imported OBJ to your subtool stack. Because yeah, if you have an object selected, it will replace that. And that's useful if you want to do like blend shapes and stuff like that. If you go to, you guys might like this, live stream highlights, and scroll down, we use that import method to change the geometry and store the information as layers, so that when we go through, there we go. So we did a Marvelous Designer wing membrane, and then we animated that in ZBrush. So we take this wing and we create a membrane at different angles, and then we bring it into ZBrush as layers, and then as we make changes to our object here, am I going to do it? Am I going to do it? So as we play with those layers, it's going to linearly interpolate between those two. So you can kind of make a stretchy wing thing in ZBrush. So if that's interesting to you, that would be under my live stream highlights wing membrane, way down at the bottom. You know what? Do I have a Discord? I think I do. I'm on Discord. I just never use it. Let me see. On this computer, I do not have Discord, but I do have Discord, so I'm on it. I'll find out where that is. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. Again, I'm going really quick through these comments. So, Mike, I sent you an email. 3 likenesses working on. Did you get them? Would you work on them maybe live? I will at some point. We're going through. I say we're going through. Okay, this next hour, I'm going to be going through this, the making of this sci-fi weapon. So, but yeah, eventually I'll probably will be able to get to them live, either on this one or my Pixelogic channel. Make chainmail for armor. How'd you go optimize that for games? Depends on how optimized you need to go. You can either do a lot of chainmail and then just cover it in a blanket of quads and project that, and then bake that as a texture map. Probably is how I would do it, because chainmail gets really heavy really fast. Go Z to, whoa, sorry. Even if I added normals and max. Ooh, I haven't used max in about 10 years. Go Z to 3ds max, symmetric objects goes normals out. That I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the max question. Realistic animal creature inside ZBrush using textures or first, or alphas, or hand sculpting. Probably hand sculpting first. Alphas and textures don't go in until I have a bunch of subdivisions ready. In fact, sculpting animals, we did that on my, you can see this one here. We blocked in a bunch of prehistoric creatures for a VR thing I'm working on. So we went through and blocked out a bunch of, well, not blocked out, we just did the Z-spheres for a bunch of prehistoric creatures, and then I took this thing, and now I'm slowly working my way up. Oh, there's my workstation setup. So you can check that out as well. And I'll link you to this playlist. Whoops. Refresh this. So here, Pixelogic, here, me. There should be a lot of info in there for you guys. Cool. Yeah, export. I mean, if it is under the export options, you can check that. But Go Z and 3D Studio Max, I seriously haven't used 3D Studio Max in like 10 years, so I would be completely out of my element at this point. Not saying don't use it, I'm just saying I haven't personally. Okay, so we talked about ZModeler, dynamic subdivisions earlier, and I'm not going to use that article. So now we're working our way down. We're going to get to live Booleans. The live Boolean system is super simple, and again, if you go to my YouTube channel I just linked out, and you go to the Intro to ZBrush 4.8 What's New, that'll walk you through all the live Boolean functionality. For this one, for this particular one, let's go ahead and load up pistol gun high res 02. Let's see where this one's at. Let's delete that. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this thing here. So let's say we've got this object here, and let's go ahead and go to texture, import, and we'll bring in that pistol here. So now I can go to texture, grab this one, add it to my spotlight. And now if I crank up my opacity, you're going to see this is the gun we're making. And I want to put holes in here. Now instead of going through this thing and trying to like perfectly put a bunch of divisions in here and split them, or use Z, well, we just did it. It was the mesh fusion to put a bunch of perfect cylinders, stretch cylinders in here and make holes through here. What I'm probably going to use is dynamic subdivision. So if I hit D, or not dynamic subdivision, it's live Boolean. So if I hit D, I'm going to go through here and I'm going to go ahead and just drop my crease tolerance down. And that'll give me my crease shape. And if I want to modify this a bit, let's go into solo mode. And then we'll do Shift D, and let's hit Control W so you can get it a little bit brighter. There we go. So if I hover over this one, now I can do crease edge. I just click crease this one here, and you can change your crease tolerance, but I can just manually go through here and add creases as needed. So I'm going to crease this shape like so, and now if I hit D, that's the shape I'm looking for. Now these creases, there we go. So these creases, like I said before, are super crispy. If I don't want them that crispy, I can go down here, smooth subdivision up to 4. Crease level, let's say down to 3, and now when I do Shift D and then D, now we're getting a nice bevel along here, and it's just a nice preview. So this is the shape I want. Now if I want to poke holes through this thing, what I would do is live Boolean, and I'd also probably put in a little control group here just to ease that transition, but that's fine. It's fine for now. So let's go back here. Let's hit Z. There we go. So we can make this, I'm going to turn the opacity down. That's just a little guy standing behind a window is the opacity. We can change the size down. And then you can use the movie timeline, which we went over earlier this morning, to store the position. Or you can just quickly go over here to document, zap link properties here. And we can do like custom 1, custom 2, side, whatever we want to do. So I can position this, hit Z to go out of widget mode. And then we can position this thing where we want it. So there we go, and then we'll hit custom 1. So now if I hit Shift Z and we're moving around, we're modeling stuff, and then we hit Z to bring that back, and then we hit custom 1, it snaps right back in there. So I want to put a elongated cylinder in here and Boolean that out. So what I'm going to do now is I can go to my custom menu, and the reason I have my custom menus, I can do a cylinder of 8, 12, 16. You could do 24 and 32. The reason I choose these is when I put this on there, I do Shift D, you're going to see with a cylinder of 8, 12, 16, 24, 32, you're going to have a line right down the middle of the cylinder, which is useful when you're working in symmetry and stuff like that. So that's one way you could do this. There's another way, there's a lot of different ways. You can append, if you don't have that, let's go out of edit mode, hit Control N, and we'll just grab a cylinder 3D, go into edit mode, go to initialize, and change our H divides down to like say 12. And then our V divides down to 3, and now you've got a cylinder here. We can hit make polymesh 3D. If you want this to be a new insert mesh brush, just hit B, create insert mesh, new. You could also do it under the brush menu. And now you've got this one. If you want it to draw out like this, which is sometimes useful, and in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a line right down the middle of this one. So I'm going to go to Insert, Multiple Edge Loops, turn off Interactive Elevation. We'll go Specified Elevation of 0. And if you just drag in here once, it'll split right down the middle. So now I can hit Control W, make this all one polygroup. I can snap to the side, and we made this brush. We just made this insert mesh brush. If I snap this one to the side, then I go to B, create insert mesh, append. Okay. Now we have a cylinder that draws out towards me and a cylinder that draws out towards me with a rounded edge. So why I might do that is if we go down to this mesh we were working on here, and we grab this one, and we pull out from the middle. Let's do Shift D. So if I pull out from the middle of this object, now we've got a cylinder that goes right down the middle and also cuts through. So if I hold down Alt and go to this unmesh mesh center, it'll go to the middle, or it shouldn't go to the middle of that unmesh mesh object. Also have perspective turned off. And then we can just scale this down and just move this into place. So if I do Shift Z to bring this back, and then custom 1, and then we can use this to kind of pinpoint how big we want this thing to be. Now, as I'm scaling it down, it's going into the object, so I'm going to scale it down and then I'm going to scale it out this way. and then Shift Z, and we'll go back to custom 1. So now it's going to be about this wide, and it's going to start here, and then it's going to stretch over. So let's fix that. Right now it's masked out of this object, so I can go in here with my move brush, and I can move these around without annoying or changing these masked objects here. What I can do is go to split either masked points or split unmasked points. If I do split masked points, it's going to keep the object I'm working on and then split these masked points off into a subtool underneath it. Now let's go ahead and turn off these start groups. I guess we can leave these start groups on. You know what? Let's go ahead and just do delete other. I don't want to have to deal with all that. There we go. So we're just working on this object just to simplify and talk about start groups and stuff later. So we've got this object here. So if I go to split unmasked points, it's going to keep my masked points and then split these unmasked points down. So when I'm doing live Boolean, you're going to want your top object to be your main object, and then your other objects to either add or subtract from that object. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I was going to do split unmasked points to split this cylinder underneath this mesh. So if I go to solo mode, you can see I have my cylinder now as a separate subtool. So I can alt tap between subtools here to select them. That way I don't have, when I'm going through a bunch of subtools, you can also use Z Scene Manager. I use that at work. I don't have it loaded here. If you have a ton of subtools and you want to work with them in a little bit more organized way. But while I'm working on just meshes, like if I go back here, I almost never go in here and try and find stuff. It's like, oh, I want to hide this one. Alt tap it, tap the nameplate, alt tap off. And now I can just sit here and tap through. Oh, I don't want this one. Alt tap it, delete. Alt tap this one, go into solo mode. Or if I just want to work on, say, this one and not anything else, I can alt tap this one, hold down shift, bent arrow up to the top, alt tap this one, shift, bent arrow to the top, and then hold down shift, turn off these eyeballs, and then tap the nameplate and turn the eyeball back on. So now I'm just working on these two subtools. If I want to turn everything back on, hold down shift, eyeball off, eyeball on, and then alt tap, turn it off, nameplate. There you go. So that's how I quickly work with subtools here. Anyway, back to this one. We want to use this object here to Boolean out. Now I'm going to modify this slightly. I'm going to pull this right up in the middle between here. And I can even make it, let's scale this down just a little bit. Now, when we Boolean, we can do this live, so it's not a huge deal if we're perfect. But in order to get the stretch shape, what I'm going to do is I'm going to control drag over half of the object. Actually, you know what? Control drag to unmask. Now be careful, if you have Dynamesh turned on and you control drag, it's going to Dynamesh this thing, but we don't. So I'm going to control drag. If I hold down Alt, it's going to unmask this part of the object and mask the rest. So that's a cool thing in 4R8. Now if I hit control and drag out, it's going to keep adding edge loops in here as we control drag out. So that's kind of like transpose modeling from ZBrush 4R7, which you can still do. You can hit Y to turn the gizmo off, and then you can hold down control, shift, and then just drag out. So either way, but hold down control, drag this out, and let's hit shift Z, go back to custom 1. And how far out we need to drag this is about that far. So I know I hit F to frame. So now we've got our object drawn out, and if I control drag, now we've got these two objects. So if I have a main object up here, you can make it a start group. It doesn't really matter if you're just working with a couple objects here, but you can get in the habit, make this a start group, make this subtractive, then turn on this live Boolean here. I have that under Alt-R. Because we have polyframe turned on, you're going to see the object a little bit, which is useful when we start modifying this thing. But if you turn that off, now you're going to see this is what the object's going to look like if you were to go ahead and say this is what I want it to do. Now, if you hit polyframe and then you hit E, let's go to Unmatched Mesh Center here. You can use this to go ahead and start scaling this. You don't have to have polyframe on. You can just go through here and just scale this thing however you'd like. And then you're also going to see this kind of faceted in here. So this is where we want to kind of play around with dynamic subdivision. So I'm going to alt tap this object here, hit D to turn our dynamic subdivisions on, which we talked about earlier. I'm going to tap this one. Now if I hit D on this one, it'll go and smooth those shapes out. However, it goes from curved and it kind of does a long bend and then curves again. So if we do Shift D and then we go into solo mode, now we're back into just eyeballing this thing. It's because it's averaging these two very far apart vertices. So what we can do is we can go to insert, a couple different ways we can do this. We can crease these edges here. So if I hover over this edge, we can go to like crease, edge loop complete, and we can crease this one. Edge loop complete's not going to do it. Let's do edge loop partial. We can crease this top one, and then this bottom one, and then this one. So now when we hit D, and it's also not going to have these ends creased. So here's another way to crease. Instead of going through here and like doing crease, flat, and then outer targets, you can go in here, you can do crease, edge loop complete, and it'll crease all the way around. Or you can do it through visibility. So if I hold down Control Shift and drag out here, and then you hit the crease button that's under geometry crease, it'll just crease any open edges. So now when you hit D, it'll be nice and creased. And because we inserted it on this object here, it inherited not only any Dynamesh properties you may have had, which we don't, it also inherited the dynamic subdivisions where we had a crease level of 3 and a smooth subdivision of 4. So that's kind of nice. So that's the shape we're getting now. So now we can see this, and if we want to scale this down completely, we can scale the object completely. And what we're going to do now is make copies of this. So we can hold down Control and drag out a copy. And if you want to see what it's doing, just hold down Shift. All right, go out of solo mode, you can Control drag copies out. If you want to drag out copies in a specific pattern, what you can do is you can do Shift Z, go back to custom one, and we've got our first one here. If I Control drag out another one, and then I Control drag out another one, it's not going to be the exact same distance. So in order to ensure that it is, I can't have access to that. Let's see. Let's do tab. There we go. Now I can see it. So you can tab some of the stuff away while we're working. If I do this sticky pin, I can do sticky pin mode. I can Control drag out a copy, and then I can hit 1, and that'll put out another copy exactly the same distance out, and then another copy the exact same distance out as I keep hitting 1. So if you do Shift Z, now you're going to see, and I go into solo mode here, you're going to see this is what I'm getting. So that's another way to do it. Another way to do it, and this is probably my preferred method because it's less destructive, is I can take this object here. We can go down here to Array Mesh, and we can say, okay, Array Mesh. This is going to be basically an instance of my object here. So if I go through Array Mesh, and then let's just go back into solo mode, and I say I want to do a repeat of, I don't even know, we can just change that on the fly. So we'll do like a repeat of 5, I suppose, or 4. And then we'll do an offset in the Z amount. And if we go negative Z, it's going to pull these things in the Z amount here. So if we do Shift Z, and then custom 1, and then we can play with this offset amount here. So you can just dial this in. You can also use your transpose line. So if I go hit W, and then go out of the gizmo mode, you can use transpose to, okay, that's going to move the original object around. Go to turn this transpose on, and now you can say, I want it to be exactly that much offset. So that way you don't have to deal with numbers. You can just use your transpose line to go through here. You can also see there's a repeat here. You can just crank up the repeats up or down, but 4 was actually the number we wanted, so that's cool. Now with this one, if you go out of solo mode, hit Shift Z, you're going to see as we're changing these amounts, it's automatically updating that live Boolean on the fly. So that's useful. The other cool thing about Array Mesh is if we do solo mode again, we can go through here. Let's say we wanted it to Boolean out, but then also kind of give me a bevel around this edge. So what we can do is let's turn off live Boolean, and we'll do Shift D. So you're going to see as I'm modifying this object, these instances of this object are going to automatically update. So we can go through here, and we can do insert single edge loop. So we'll insert an edge loop here. Inside, I'll just insert an edge loop here, and then we'll insert an edge loop here. And now what I can do is I can take this poly group, hover over an edge, polygroup, polyloop, whoops, tap Alt, and now we can do QMesh, polygroup all. And as we're Q-meshing this out, hold down Shift, and that'll just give you, it'll just pull along that surface normal, giving us this kind of beveled look. So now if I want to, now go into solo mode here. If I hit D, it's going to give us a very averaged look. So if I go into solo mode, and we turn live Boolean back on, you're going to see it's not exactly what we're looking for. For example, let's go into polyframe mode here. So if I hold down Control and drag, and then Control tap to invert, and then we use move to kind of push that in. As this is updating, it's just kind of vaguely, you know, see how soft that fall off is? Not what I'm looking for at all is what the point I'm trying to get across here. So let's go back into solo mode here, and let's add a crease edge loop complete here and here. So now when we hit D, we're getting a nice crease along here. So when I go out of solo mode here, turn on polyframe. If I control, I'm control dragging over these edges here, control tapping to invert that, and then we can use this move here. So as we move this in, and we turn off polyframe here. So as I'm moving this in, see that bevel we're getting along this line here? So now it's booleaning out and also giving me a bevel. And you can control the width of that bevel the more you push in based on, so this is no bevel, and then as we push in, it's basically pushing that bevel onto the object here. So as we push in, it's going to slowly bevel that object out. So you can do both. So let's say this is this is very thin, so I would probably change the design a bit to give me a little more breathing room. Doesn't look very structurally sound, but whatever. Demo time, right? So this is the live Boolean look I'm looking for, and now if I go out of live Boolean, this is what my subtools are going to look like. I'm going to have a start group and a Boolean, and then we're off to the races. So all I got to do is toggle live Boolean render on, and I can see what's happening. So the reason, and you could use this to just carve out shapes. So if I go in here, and so this is a subtractive mesh, right? So if I go to brush insert primitive, and we just insert a cube on this object here, it's going to look like nothing's happening. Oh, maybe it does. Let's see. Let's do, let's turn off live Boolean so we can see what we're doing. So if I go in here and I insert a cube, oh, you know what? So here's a cool thing. As I'm inserting a cube on this object with this object selected, it's also inheriting the array mesh properties. So if I go through here and I do like a split mask points, now we have an array mesh of these cubes. So I can go through here and use this to like cut in as well. So if I move this out here and then we do, let's go ahead and crease here. So now as we're creasing those and I turn live Boolean back on, now we're chopping these multiple pieces out because we've got another array mesh. So the other cool thing, if I go back into polygroup mode and we do Shift-D, I can go through here and I can go, let's go ahead and bevel edge loop complete here, and let's say we want to mask and pull up here, and then we want to move this down. So now when I turn Boolean off, you're going to see this is the shape we're getting. Or if we want it to be thinner, we can just scale it down and just kind of punch in little brackets under here. So now we've got, it inherited the array mesh properties, the dynamic subdivision properties, and the fact that it's a subtractive mesh. Now if I don't want it to be subtractive, I want it to be additive, just go up here and choose additive. And now it will add that geometry when we do our Boolean. Cool beans. So, live Boolean on, additive, subtractive, or you can do an intersection. So it'll be an intersection of those two. And again, this is all live. So as I move this thing around, it's doing an intersection of those properties here. Make sense? And again, if I get back, I'll be completely backed up in these conversations, so I apologize in advance. Cyborg Hand, would you give you a tip on how you can copy an already made finger and scale it for human-like ones? Kind of like what we did here. You can have a subtool. You can merge all the subtools together for your finger and then control drag copies off, or just hit duplicate and then transpose it around as needed, or gizmo it around. Let's go ahead and delete that one. For example. Why does everyone bash ZBrush UV making, learn UVs, and everybody suggests using other programs in order to create UVs? What should I consider during UV making? Wait another 6 months, and possibly you will never have to do UVs again. But ZBrush UVs are fine for doing quick and dirty UVs. So for example, if I do Shift-D on this one, oops. So you got Shift-D on this one. If I want to, let's go out of live Boolean mode here. If I want to UV this object, I would probably go through here and like group by normals, and that'll just group these faces off into different quadrants here. Let's do another one, group by normals. Yeah, so you can use group by normals, and then if you go down here to Z plugin, UV master, work on clone, we have symmetry turned on, polygroups turned on, unwrap, and then flatten. These are the UVs you're going to get. Now the reason somebody might say use another program for your UVs, they might give you they're just better UV tools. Like this one, you can move the stuff around if you need to and straighten them out with clipping and stuff, but it's a little bit It's fine. It's fine for previs work. I use it all the time. But for real production UV work, it's just easier sometimes to, and I mean, especially for hard surface stuff, but organic stuff too, to go through and like cut. You see, I use UV Hedis a lot. Whoops. Guess I can't bring that in. But it's fine. And so if you do unflatten here and you copy your UVs, let me go back to this mesh, and then we paste our UVs, and then you go down here to texture map, create, new from UV check. Now we've got our UVs here, and you can kind of see where those UVs go. So anyway, the ZBrush UVs are fine, but if you want real control over your UVs and making them nice and straight and production worthy, probably another program might have more options for you. Hold on, control and start drag and copy, then hold shift, it'll work. Thanks. Is there a way to get the smart selection control shift feature? It should just be in there. Yes, this is already being being streamed to YouTube, so as soon as I'm done, it'll go to my YouTube channel and you can watch it. Cool. So if you go to, how would I do this? Let's Google. Pavlovich GDC 2015. You can see my long spiel on production and automating production and UVs and game res meshes and stuff, where I think we're getting pretty close to having game reses and UVs just being done by robots. And by robots, I just mean software. It's getting really, really close to, and you know, I say this and it's going to be like, well, and for the next 15 years, everybody's going to be like, well, in order to get a job, you really got to know what's going on under the hood and you got to do UVs. And I believe that's true. However, in most production settings and for most production work, the results are getting to the point where even if the game res optimized mesh may not look like something that a human would do, it's actually more optimized and bakes better maps. There's a lot of good tools coming out. So we're getting close. And of course you need to know how to UV things if something breaks, but at the end of the day, in 15 years, you know, I don't have to write a Z buffer or a UV coordinate system every time I want to model something in 3D. I have a feeling the same thing's going to be true for UVs and game resos because they're really not as important as production makes them out to be. I hate to, you know, and that's a strong statement, and it's not really true, I guess. But I have seen instances where even really good artists hand doing stuff isn't. And also there's a trade-off. There's a cost benefit that you have to do. You can do an automated mesh and automated UVs and bake your maps and put it in game. And if no one's going to call you out on it, and the texel density is actually more impressive than you would get from an actual artist who laser UVs out just in case you need to go into Photoshop or whatever. The days of going into Photoshop and doing stuff, I haven't gone into Photoshop and done texture work in years. That's just me. Your mileage may vary. And there's always reasons to delay things out artistically, but I think those days are limited. I think those days are numbered. So we'll see, but it's coming. Now, that's not to say those tools are going to be made immediately or they're going to be in your price range. So, and also for the next, like I said, the next 10, 15 years, you're going to have to know how to do it because the leads hiring you are going to want to know that you can UV stuff and you can make a game res. And it's not hard. It's not difficult work. It's just boring, tedious work. And it's not particularly artistic. In a way, it kind of is. But in another more accurate way, it sucks. So, you know, wait for that stuff to disappear. It will disappear, but you're still going to need to know how to do it. So when I say you won't need to, if you don't plan on ever getting a job in this industry and you're just going to be working freelance or on your own stuff, you might not have to. But if you're going to get a job at any studio, go ahead and learn how to do it. It's not difficult. It's just boring. So we got Booleans. Live Boolean we went over. Oh yeah, let's go back to my live Boolean stuff. Is pretty simple. Okay, Okay, we talked about that. Now, again, if you want to do multiple, let's talk more about live Boolean. So first thing with live Boolean is we hit D. Let me go ahead and stop this here. We hit D to dynamically subdivide our object, and let's go ahead and do our crease again. So those are our two objects, and we can crease this thing however we want, but it's fine. In order to make another start group here, what we can do is we can like append a cube here, and we'll take this cube and we'll scale it down. So I want this cube to have nothing to do with this object. So what's going to happen is if I don't put it in a new start group and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm going to go down here and we're going to do subtool Boolean. We're going to turn on our live Boolean and we're going to say make Boolean mesh. Now we need to turn on dynamic subdiv because we did turn on dynamic subdiv to get these nice smooth shapes. If I have that off, it's going to basically Boolean this shape. Not what I want. So dynamic Boolean turned on, make Boolean mesh. And if we go up here to our U mesh or union mesh and we look at it, now this cube is sewn right onto this object. And it keeps your polygroups, it keeps your perfect geometry that you had, and it just basically interpolates between these two objects, where it cuts in edges as needed for these two objects here. And it's like, no, I wanted the square separately, and now I've got a weird hole in my square. Now it's perfect, so you can use that to your advantage too. But that's weird. So in order to not get that, let's go ahead and delete that. You got to go down here, and you got to go to your cube here, and you got to make a new start group. And now on this start group, what we can do is we can go to brush insert. Let's go to our insert mesh Boolean. I think Joseph just made a bunch of these. So if I go to my insert brush and I just choose one, so we choose this brush here, we have our live Boolean render on. It's not going to Boolean right now because it's part of the same object here. So we have this. Now if I want to change this, all I got to do is hit W, and we can just cycle through all of these at once. But how do we see the Boolean effect of this? So what I'm going to do is, again, let's turn off the sticky mode here. If I go to my subtool split menu, we do split unmasked points. It's going to shoot this one down. And now it made it its own start group because it inherited the start group properties. Just turn that off. And now it's not part of the start group. And now we can go to subtractive. And now it's subtractive. And now I can go through here. I can rotate this thing around. I can hold down control and copy out copies and Boolean that way. Now I can also hit, with the gizmo turned on, I can still cycle through and choose a different one. It's like, I don't want that one. I wanted this one. Yeah, that's the one I wanted. So now I can go up here. I can scale this thing down, and I can hold down control, drag out a copy, and I'm off to the races. Now another thing I do is hold down control, unmask, hold down alt and reset this one, then control drag this down. We can do that as well. And you can also turn on X symmetry, so you can do it on both sides. Now because if I go out of solo mode, I didn't do it on one side. It's a pretty easy fix. If I turn on my floor plane, you're going to see this is the middle of my world. This is, let's see, if we do a quick mirror and weld across the X, that'll go ahead and mirror and weld it across the X axis. And now we have it on both sides. So as I'm changing this side here, it's like, oh, I want those deeper. So I push it in further. It's going to go deeper on this side as well. So assuming I have X turned on, which I do. Now the other cool thing is, since I already have a subtractive mesh, if I go back in here and I choose another thing and I just draw that on here, it's already going to automatically be subtractive. Another thing you can do is if we go here to our brush options and we go down here to modifiers and we do the multi-mesh selector. If I change that to, let's do 1. So if you hover over this, you're going to see this is the multi-mesh selector. If you hold down control, it'll tell you what you're doing. It's going to cycle through the meshes. So I think with 1 selected, I pull this one out, pull this one out. So as I'm going through and pulling out new ones, it's just cycling through forward in that direction. You can cycle it forward, backwards, or just choose random. So if we go to 3, it'll just pull a random one like that. Cool. So that's with the subtractive mesh. So now, let's not pull down a random. Let's just grab the one we want. Let's say we want this one. Pull this one out. So this is the shapes we're getting, right? Now these are faceted. So let's hit D, dynamically subdivide. And then for this one, let's do another dynamic subdivision for this one. So we talked about geometry is, I'm going blind over here. So this is why I have my Dynamesh properties all in here. But for you guys, geometry, we have dynamic subdivisions turned on. It just kind of averages these edges. And it doesn't affect the Booleans at all. Those are just live Booleans. They're not union mesh yet, but they're live Booleans. So let's change this one from a smooth subdivision here to a Q grid. And we'll change that coverage here so we can kind of bevel these corners here. There we go. And now we've got these two. Now we have a start group for the cube. We have a start group for this part here. So now when we go to our make Boolean dynamic subdivision, make Boolean mesh, and we go up here to our U mesh now, we've got two subtools, two start groups. We got this one here, and we got this one here. So we go to this one, turn on polyframe, and we go to solo mode. That doesn't cut through or affect that object anymore. And then these objects are already cut right out of this object here, because we did a subtractive. So way to use those together. And that was going over part 4, live Booleans, step 5, barrel rifling. Now we're actually going to get to that. And this is part of, so let's go ahead and do load tool. Let's see what 2 says. Did we do that one yet? All right. Guess it doesn't really matter. So this barrel in here, let's hold down shift. Let's turn off live Boolean here. Let's say we've got this barrel piece here. Another thing you can do, and these are all, this is all part of one subtool here. Another thing you can do is you can see this auto collapse. You can go through here and this will auto collapse your start groups. So as you're clicking on start groups, it will go through and show you the objects that are underneath that particular start group. So if we take this one, hold down shift, we can turn everything else off, and then we can just work with these two start group options. So if I alt tap this one here, let's go into solo mode, let's do delete other. Because again, I'm just going to work with this piece here. So we have a cylinder, and all this is just a cylinder with dynamic turned on. No big deal. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and split off those pieces here. It's a split hidden. And now we'll make this one our new start group. We've turned on the Boolean render. You're going to see those objects are now cutting in. If we select this one and go to solo, those are the objects we're looking at. So let's go ahead and get rid of this one and get rid of this one. So we can still keep some Boolean stuff around, like so. And with this one here, if we hold down Alt, we can center this one here. There we go. And we just kind of move these Booleans around. So we can get the kind of shape we want. But let's say we want to put in a rifle barreling right down the center of this cylinder. So what we did is Control N, clear my canvas. Let's go over here to the cylinder 3D, drag that primitive, go into polyframe mode, and let's initialize this just a little bit. So if we go over here to initialize, we can change the X size and the V, X, and Z size. So we're going to do 25 for the X, tab, 25 for Z, hit enter. No, maybe not 25 for Z. So this is Z oriented, we're aligned Y. If we want to, we probably do want to align Z. So let's hit align Z, and that'll align it so we're Z forward. That's the direction the barrel's going, is Z forward. So in this case, we're going to do Z size of 100 and then Y size of 25. There we go. So this is going to give us our look. We can also go in here to H divides and change that to, we can just change that to like 12, maybe 16. We can go over to the V divides, and let's just make, I guess, nice even quads. And feel free to choose whatever numbers that make sense for you. So now what we can do is if we hold down Control and tap, that'll mask our entire object. We're still in initialize primitive mode. You can't do this, what I'm about to do, with a regular old cylinder. So if we go over here to masking, you're going to see we have mask by alpha, and we have a row, column, and grid option here. So if I do select 2, skip 2, and then I do columns, it's going to select 2 columns and then skip 2 columns and do that. So now I can still go in here to my deformations. And if I want to, I can do, for example, an inflate. You can do a twist here. So we're going to be twisting this stuff. You can also do, where is it? Inflate. We can do an inflate here. Now, obviously, this isn't going to give us our barrel rifling. So, I mean, it will give us our barrel rifling, but you see when we did inflate and then we want to twist, it's keeping that stuff masked. So you're going to want to inflate, control drag, and then twist along the Z-axis, and that'll go ahead and rifle your barrel. Now, how deep and how many rifles is going to depend on your resolution, so you're just going to have to dial that in. So if in this case here, we might want to do something a little more subtle. And you can always change this on the fly. So it's like, you know what, that's not good enough. Go back down here. Let's change our H divides here to 24. There we go. And I'm going to change my V divides here just to add a little bit more. And now we can go back here to masking. Again, Control tap to, that's the other thing, weird thing too, is if I go through here and just hit row or column, it's going to just completely ignore you. You need to mask it all first, and that's just control tapping out here in your document. Now if you do row, select to, skip to, and let's do row, it's going to do those. So now we can go through here and we can do an inflate on this one. But for rifling, that's not going to help us very much. So again, unmask, control tap, we're going to do columns. We're going to go ahead and do an inflate, and we're going to unmask, and we're going to go up here and we're going to twist. There we go. So now I get some rifling on there. And again, if you don't want it that extreme, just don't twist it that much. You can just do a very subtle twist along here. If you want to really twist it, then feel free to just keep dragging that over. Now that we have that shape, we can use this as our Boolean mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I don't want to do with these initialize options anymore. I want to make this a real mesh. Go up here to make polymesh 3D. And if you want to get even cleaner, what I would do is hold down Control Shift, go up here to clip. Let's just clip this top, and we'll clip this bottom. And let's make it a nice cylinder. You don't have to do that, but if on the back, it might be relevant to you. Another thing you can do is you can crease this thing. So if I turn the floor off and we go in here and we do our crease tolerances under geometry crease, you can drag your crease tolerance down to like a very low, like 31, and it will start creasing through here. Man, we're gonna have to go really low. 19, there you go. So we can crease here, but then it's grabbing some of these things. So let's do something that's a little bit more visually representative. So I'm gonna go down here to polygroup instead, so we can kind of see a little bit better what we're doing. So we'll do polygroups first, and then we'll crease those polygroups. So go in here to polygroups, and you know what, let's clip this all the way down to that level here. There we go. So we have group by normals. So here we're grouping by normals, and all of these, it's not quite picking up that subtle angle. So if we grab this max angle, we pull it down, and let me pull it down some more. There we go. Now every single one of these is getting a different polygroup. So now you can kind of visually see, oh, it's very pretty too. So now you can kind of visually see every single place where we're going to put a crease. So now in order to crease this, just go back to your geometry crease menu, do crease PG, and now when we hit, see how it's all faceted? If we hit D, that's going to give us our dynamic preview. Of course, you can go up here to dynamic, say choose smooth subdiv to 3, crease level, or smooth subdiv to 4, crease level of 3, and that'll kind of back it off and give you a slight bevel along those edges. So now we have our barrel. At this point, you could append this object and move it into place, or you can also just go to the end here, and we'll hit B, create insert mesh, new. I got a new insert mesh, so now if we go back to our cylinder here, we can alt tap the cylinder. You can do Shift D if you want. And then right down the middle of the cylinder, you can just pull out that rifling. And then we can go ahead and do split, unmask points. It'll shoot it below. And then we'll make this subtractive as well. So now when we turn our live Boolean render back on, and we hit W, as we're pulling this in, it's going to go ahead and rifle through. Of course, we're probably going to want to turn dynamic on for this as well. So now we've got our rifling. We'll hit D for dynamic subdivisions. And now, as we push back, let's hold down Alt and reset that. As we push back, it's just going to rifle all the way through. If we turn on polyframe, you're going to see this is what we're getting. So we're just pushing that rifling through here and getting that result. Now, as it's rifling through, these are clipping through the barrel, so that's not very realistic. So we can go back down here. We can pull these objects down and make it a little more subtle so that the rifling doesn't clip through, because this thing will clip all the way through, like so. Cool. All right. And again, if I miss any questions or anything, I apologize. I'm having to go through them pretty quick here. Cool. Advice for getting into a routine for your upcoming course, like practicing a couple hours a day, seems overwhelming. Oh, my upcoming CGMA course, I assume you're talking about. Let me see if I can find that. Stream. Let me just Google it. Pavlov, how are we doing on time? Okay. CG Master Academy. I think this is me. Okay, so this is my CG Master Academy course here. Basically what we do is, looks like it's not fully loaded here. Basically, it's the prerequisites to this class are watching the Intro to ZBrush Part 1 just to get the basics down. I don't want to teach a course where I spend a week on making sure you guys know how to navigate. That's going to be boring. So getting Intro to ZBrush Part 1 out of the way, and also on Intro to ZBrush Part 3 and Intro to ZBrush Part 2. So Intro to ZBrush Part 2, so we have a prerequisite. Watch Intro to ZBrush Part 1 and follow along and do all those things. Intro to ZBrush Part 2, I want you to learn the custom hotkeys and custom interface stuff. I don't want to spend a week telling you guys how to set up a hotkey or creating custom interface. That can just be something you can already know how to do. You don't have to necessarily do it, but just be aware that it's there and available to you. So as you go through the course, you can... You know what you use all the time, and it just as a rule of thumb, if I use it all the time, like switching between like clay brush, clay tubes, clay, Damien standard brush, Z modeler brush, all those things are assigned to hotkeys. You're going to see I'm cycling through up here. Like here's my clay brush, here's my clay buildup, here's my standard brush. Those are hotkeys. If I go and use something all the time as well, I have a hotkey assigned to this custom menu. So these are things I use all the time. If I have things I don't use all the time but I want quick access to, I'll just throw them down here. This is where I put my materials at. You don't have to put them down here. And I put snake hook down here because I use it just occasionally. If I have things I use on occasion but I don't really need to you can also auto load stuff in a ZBrush. Like Smooth Stronger I auto load because I use Smooth Stronger all the time, and then I just dial back the intensity here. So I hold down Shift, go to Smooth Stronger here, and then Q, there we go. Hold down Shift, Smooth Stronger, and then I can just back that Z intensity off. Also, you can throw stuff here in your light box. So if I go into brush here, did I put my kit bash stuff in here yet? Kit bash. So I can go to my kit bash library. So the kit bash library, I don't want to load up every time I start up ZBrush in case I don't need them, but if I do need them, I can quickly go through here, and then we can go to like bolts, knobs, and switches. I can load that up, and then I can hit M. And we can just go through here and grab whatever we need, or go through up here. That kind of thing. So that's that. That's the basics of that. So that would be basically where I would assign a hotkey, where I would put it in a custom menu, where I would put it in the light box, depending on how often I use them, basically. So then Intro to ZBrush Part 2. Intro to ZBrush Part 3 is a prerequisite as far as what's free on YouTube, which would be the Z modeler stuff. So just learn Z modeler, and you saw how fast it was to use Z modeler. So just getting the basics of Z modeler down. And then what we do is we go through basically the info that's in Intro to ZBrush 2, Intro to ZBrush 2, and Intro to ZBrush Part 3. But imagine this, it's actually more condensed, and it's more towards quick iteration and concept design. Using ZBrush to be a fast iteration and getting your ideas out tool, as opposed to a production tool, which can be, but production stuff there's other classes to take on, like how to make a perfect game res and UV it perfectly for production. I don't go over that. This is a ZBrush class for getting your ideas out quickly, not a ZBrush production class. So you can do both, but that's what my class is more about. And I do think it's coming up. But it is a lot, and it's going to be a lot. But I'd rather give you way too much information, but give you the information that you can go back and take notes on or rewatch, than not give you enough information and you're bored. You know, but your mileage may vary. It might suck for you. It might be a terrible class because it's too much. But I'd rather give you too much and have you take a lot away from the class than not give you enough. Cool. Alrighty. Best way to clean up the Boolean results for sculpting on top. We go over a little bit of that in the YouTube. Let's see, intro. If you go up here to the ZBrush 4.8 What's New, let's do show more. ZBrush 4.8 What's New. If we scroll down, there is a movie on, and we can talk about this a little bit too, but just to give you resources to go back to after this or during this if I'm getting boring. Sub projection. What am I looking for here? How late did I go over it? Cleanup. I think it was back here. Also, Houdini has some good VDM stuff as well. Vector displacement meshes are cool. We don't really use them on this project, but okay, here we go. Modifying sharp Boolean intersections. So on this one, I go through a couple techniques to, once you Boolean these things out, to go through. And again, it's not perfect. I already know people are going to be rolling their eyes when they go over these techniques and be like, well, why can't it just blank? I don't know why. Because 3D is hard sometimes. It's hard until somebody figures it out, and then there's all sorts of cool stuff. Now, if you were doing this in Keyshot, what you could do is take these hard edges and you could round them out. So in Keyshot, you can, let's just play all. So in Keyshot, there's normals and round edges. So if you're just going to do it in rendering and not worry about having that information in ZBrush, all you need to do is in Keyshot go to, and I guess we could go over this too if you wanted to. First of all, if it's too faceted, you can go into Keyshot and you can smooth your normals in Keyshot without having to add a bunch of subdivision levels in ZBrush, so you get much nicer glass renders. So you can do edit normals and then change your normals. And then another thing you can do is you can go over here, select the object, and you're going to see a rounded edges with a radius. So you can just pull up this rounded edges, do it. Thank you, Michael. And now you can just add rounded edges in Keyshot. So when you go in here and you render with, say, glass and stuff, you get a much nicer result. And speaking of, if you just go down to the bottom here, you know, we render this thing out, and I was using Threadripper, so we were saying how awesome Threadripper is. And speaking of, if you open up Threadripper here, as the CPU I'm using this, the 1950X is what we're using. So ZBrush is a very RAM and CPU intensive program. So this has 128 gig of RAM on it, and also a 16-core processor with 32 threads. So plenty of, especially rendering performance and like building lighting and or compiling shaders on Unreal and stuff is a little bit more intense on your CPU. So that's that. And also in my Pixlogic channel, we did a glass of beer. So we did nano mesh to create all those little bubbles inside. So we modeled the glass of beer really quickly. It's just a cylinder basically, and we changed the normals. And then we use nano mesh to add all these little bubbles in here. We talk about render settings for that. And then we go through here and add labels and stuff and change our environments and change our lighting. So we get that. That was a fun one. Oh yeah, but speaking of, the quickest way to do it, for example, could we do it on this one? This one might be tricky, which might be an okay thing, but let's keep it simple. So for example, what you could do is we have a cube, make polymesh 3D. Now if I want to put a cylinder on this cube, I can do my primitive insert, or I can hold down Control and tap, and then we can hit our gizmo here. We're going to hold down Alt and move this gizmo up. And then if I go in here, I can say, give me a cylinder 3D. And where did it go? Is it inside my object? Come on. Okay, let's do Z forward, because I think that's the orientation it likes. So we'll do Z forward with our gizmo here. And now we'll go into our gear, and we'll say cylinder, polycylinder. And oh boy, is it not even going to work? Okay, let's try this. Give me a damn polycylinder. Oh, you know what? It's small. I don't know why it does that. I might be doing something wrong. So instead of a polycylinder here, let's say we want to do a cube. So we go back to our cube, and you can go through here, and you can change. Let's make it a simple cube here. So very simple cube. Now if I want to keep this cube, I can hold down Control and tap, hit W, hold down Alt, and move this out. And now, geez. And now we can go in here, and now we can do a polycylinder, add a polycylinder, and we can say X divides and Z divides here. But you know what? I want a cylinder 3D. I don't know. Oh yeah, because I was playing with it. So instead of a polycylinder, I'm going to do cylinder 3D, so we get the polarized caps. And then we can change the V divides here down. So, or you know what? I can just go back through here, and we can do just make this a polycube. So whatever you want to do. Yeah, let's go ahead and add some subdivisions on here. Okay, we're happy with this. We'll hit W, and we'll just move this over. And while this is here, let's just go to deformation and hit unify. So we're in ZBrush's scale. And then here we can go, I'm going to hold down Control Shift isolate this. We'll do split hidden, and then we'll make that subtractive, go into our live Boolean render, and this is the result we get. So we've got 2 cubes making that kind of thing. And you can go ahead and hit dynamic subdivisions on these things if you want. I'll go ahead and round those out. Let's say for this one we don't. Or we can do maybe, yeah, it's fine. We'll just won't. So we have dynamic on this one, not dynamic on the other one. So let's say we want to clean this up. In fact, let's go ahead and increase this smooth subdivision up to 3. There we go. So let's say we like this. We're going to go to Boolean, dynamic subdivision, make the Boolean mesh. And we grab this one. So see, this wouldn't be very sculptable. And this would be perfectly sculptable. But if we want to even those two out, what I'd probably do is go down here. First, I would probably duplicate this off just in case. So I'm going to take this one. We're going to go solo mode. And we're going to go to geometry. Geometry. Oh boy. Z-remesher. And if I like the polygon count, I can do same. I'm going to change the adaptive size down to 0. And that's just going to give me nice even quads. We're going to do keep groups and smooth groups down to 0 as well. We hit Z-remesh. And that's going to go through and evaluate my mesh and give me new geometry, maintaining those polygroups here and just giving me nice even geometry throughout. So that's one way to do this. And you can play with these if you want to, like, you know, get a little bit more resolution on your edges. You can change this adaptive size up a little bit. You can even smooth your groups out a little bit. It probably won't have a super desired result, but let's see. That smooth groups usually works better on organic, but I don't know. Yeah, probably not. Let's not do smooth groups. That didn't seem to work too good. So, but changing the adaptive size up is going to give me a little more resolution around where the geometry changes direction. It's going to make my poly count not quite as accurate, but now you're going to see this is a little bit better in here. Now, here's the other thing. If you want these things to also, so see, let's do this, Z-remesher. You could also just dynamesh this thing too. Nothing's stopping you from doing that. But if you wanted a little bit more of a controlled result, you could do this. Now see how in here, these lines aren't straight. It kind of goes like straight and then curvy. Let's go ahead and undo that. Let's go do a group by dynamesh normals, and now I'm going to get a normal or a polygroup for here, here, and here. Now we have keep groups on, and now we can just do Z-remesher, and it should keep those lines nice and straight. Man, my right arm is tired. Ugh. There we go. So now we got nice straight lines in here. So now we got polygroups for each side over here. Now this was same polygroup density. If I want to do half, I can just do half, and it'll just Z-remesh quickly. So you just keep hitting half if you want to, just get a lower res representation of what you're working on. Now, of course, there's limits, so it's going to start doing some zany stuff because it's trying to keep a track of a bunch of stuff, but that's another thing you can just do. So there you go. And now you can do, if you want, you can increase polygroup. And now you can go in here to your dynamic. So we've creased those polygroups. We have dynamic turned on, and then we can change our crease level down to like 2, smooth subdiv up to 3. Actually, you know what? Smooth sub 2, crease level 1 is probably what we're looking for here. So there's a lot of geo here. So D, D, there you go. So now we're getting a nice beveled, smooth result, and it's totally sculptable. So you can go through here with clay brush and just clay brush this out. Another cool thing is, if we go here, and let's just drop a cylinder on here, and we'll go ahead and split unmask points, and we will make this, we'll go ahead and crease this up. Crease, there we go. Wait a minute. Oh, you know what? We have our crease level set to 1. So 3, it inherited the smooth subdivision property, so we'll just do this. And then subtractive, and we can move this cylinder in here. Now, if I want to, I can go ahead and say, you know what, that's nice, but I want to sculpt on the cylinder. So I'm going to go back into the cylinder, and I'm going to say, you know what, cylinder, you are dynameshed. So we can just dynamesh the cylinder, and it's still going to lie Boolean that dynamesh. And you can also say, you know what, cylinder, I'm going to go through here, and I want to sculpt on you. Oh, we also have dynamic turn on, so do Shift D if you're getting into dynamesh here. We can go through here, we can mask this out, and now we can use dynamesh to go ahead and modify this. We can hold on Shift and smooth our dynamesh down. We can go through here and we can sculpt on our dynamesh here. Turn on polyframe, so we can sculpt on our dynamesh on this side. Let's go into transparency with the ghost turned on. And we can go in with our clay brush, and we can just start like sculpting on this dynamesh. So as we're sculpting on the dynamesh, you're going to see it's updating live on our live Boolean. So feel free to use sculpting as well with your live Booleans here. No problemo. One of the best online academies. Colleges get formal title on 3D modeling. I'm at the other side of the world, and unfortunately, no good courses where I live. I mean, I teach at CG Master Academy. I don't know if it's going to give you. The good news is that this industry is very portfolio based. So if you go to a studio and you know what they work on, and you've tailored your portfolio to that studio for the work that they work on, and it's an amazing portfolio, you're going to be in really good shape. The bad news is you have to do all that, because you don't want to leave them thinking like, well, they're kind of good here, but they're really bad here, and I don't know. So the good news is have a badass portfolio. That's as easy as that. The bad news is have a badass portfolio tailored to the company you want to apply to, and that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're first starting out. So, but the good news about that is you don't have to go to Harvard. You don't have to go to any school and be like, wow, he went to University of Texas Business or law or Harvard. Harvard's good at everything, right? So that doesn't matter as much. I don't care. And then again, these are my opinions. These aren't the opinions of everybody you're going to meet in the industry, but I don't care where you went to school at all. Like, it means nothing to me. The school you go to or the classes that you take, for me, I went to Ringling College. It's a fine college, and they were really good instructors, and I learned a lot. But the good thing about going to Ringling is there is recruiting, which was good in 2005, but also working with, it's basically being around like-minded students and being around students who are going to push you to get better, because you're going to come in every day to class and see people who are better than you are, and it's going to make you want to get better, and you're going to learn from those people, and you're going to ask them questions, you're going to work late with those people in the lab. So working with the students around you, like-minded, good students, is really, that was really probably the best thing about Ringling to me. Aside from their curriculum, and their faculty was great too, but working around like-minded people pushing you to get better is great. If you can't do that, you're on the other side of the world, and you're separated from people who do this kind of thing. It's 2017, so hopefully there's a good forum or a good place for you to just be involved, or an art station, or forum somewhere to kind of just be involved and talk on Discord or whatever. And I'll try and get you the Discord information. I do have a Discord somewhere, but I don't know. Me and social media, it's like pulling teeth. So, good luck with that. The CG Master Academy I teach at, my class is pretty intense. I haven't watched any other classes, so I can't speak to them specifically, but it seems like they got pretty good teachers, pretty good results. Also, Gnomon is another one. UArtsy and YouTube. So if you can just organize your videos and take notes and apply those, then really, when it comes to good 3D, for me anyways, some people are just amazing right out of the box. Everything I do that looks easy and looks like, oh wow, it just kind of happens, that stuff is years of failing behind the scenes, or sometimes on the scenes. Sometimes I do fail live all the time, but that's where just hours and hours and hours of practice and getting better and doing not just one thing, but doing multiple things, so that I get better over time and I learn new things, and then I eventually create something that's decent to put in a portfolio, and then just keep doing that over and over and over again. Alrighty, coming up on 8 o'clock. Likenesses. Yeah, I don't have them downloaded right now. And honestly, like, as I'm going through this, as we do our warm-ups, maybe next Thursday I might get to the likenesses. I'll load them up. And honestly, I don't do likenesses. I think that work is really boring and tedious. But one person who's really good, used to work with this guy, Tony Reynolds. This guy does likenesses like crazy. Napoleon Dynamite. I'll go ahead and link you guys to him. So if you really want likeness work, this is the guy to go talk to. Me, I'm going to look at it and go, yeah, it looks like him. In order for me to do a likeness, it's basically loading up reference, matching the face in all these different angles, having reference around my machine, and then just using my observational skills to really dial in their likeness exactly. which is a fine thing to do, but really tediously boring for me. But starting with a base mesh and just dialing in from your reference and adding your details like that is it's not bad. If you have the right tools, it's pretty fun. But for me, not really my thing. But for this guy, Tony, it's what he does. So he might be a better resource than me. Better way to get not so perfect edges using live booleans. That would probably be where I would just go in here and say maybe apply Dynamesh. And then you could just manually go through here and just kind of smooth this stuff out. Did that actually do anything? Oh, we're still in live. Where's my UMesh? There we go. So we're going to do solo, blur Dynamesh. So here, you can just smooth this out, or you can do polish by features, which will polish up just around those. But that's perfect edges too. So I'd have to play around with that. But also that video I have on my YouTube channel on the ZBrush 4R8, what's new, number 18. I go through some options in there that may or may not be useful to you. Cool. Alrighty, creasing border is just under the crease menu. Crease PG is crease polygroup, or if you want to, you can also hold down Control Shift and isolate, and then you could just hit the crease button under geometry crease, and that'll crease any open edges. Cool. Alrighty, and then thanks everybody. I'm gonna head out. Hope that was useful. And once we're all doing all these techniques, I'm going to edit them down and put them in a playlist on my YouTube channel. But as soon as I sign off, it's also going to go to my YouTube channel as well, so you can go back through this particular episode. It'll be eventually under my live stream full episodes. But all right, see you guys later. Thanks for showing up, and I'll see you next Thursday.